Good morning. Welcome to Abundant Life Homestead, where Monday through Thursday I go live for a little bit of my morning quiet time, a large part of which involves an unscripted, unplanned Bible study, and I like to do that first thing in the morning so that I see how I understand those verses right here and now, and then I can build on that, study on those scriptures, meditate on them, and have a much better understanding on them as we go. And I hope you do the same. Hope everyone's well this morning. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We didn't have anything too exciting going on this weekend. I did get got a couple videos up on the channel. On Friday, had one of me and the boys playing outside in the snow, pulling them on the tow behind snow tube. It's the only time they've done that so far this year, and I don't know, the way the weather's looking, it may be the only time they get to. We got a big warm up coming for at least the next 10 days, and by the time we get to the end of March, we don't usually have much snow left. And then I put up another one yesterday that I actually recorded way back in August, and it was just doing the transmission oil, the pulley case oil, and final drive oils on the Farmall. Good morning, Melinda. So, other than that, I did start something a little new this week. I'm going to try it out one time and see how kind the YouTube algorithm is to me. Not necessarily kind, but as long as they're not detrimental to me. The study we follow, the Connections Bible Study, it follows the Revised Common Lectionary, which is used by many, many denominations and colleges and pastors and churches around the world. But one interesting thing is, I know us and many other churches, we actually take it in a different order than what it's laid out in the Revised Common Lectionary. So this week everybody's reading the same scriptures, but different people are reading them at different times. So yesterday I went ahead and read and typed out and uploaded all of the videos for just the readings. I did them in short format and in long format, and went ahead and uploaded all 8 of those videos overnight so that the entire week's readings are uploaded and ready and searchable. And then through the week, we're still going to go through it in the order that we go through it. And I've never done anything like that where I've uploaded a whole bunch of videos in such a short time frame. Total time of the videos, it's like 24 minutes for all the videos together at most. But it was just a whole bunch of videos back to back, and I don't know what the YouTube algorithm's going to do about that. If it's going to say okay, or if it's going to start suppressing things. Oh, this guy just spammed a bunch of videos. So we'll see how that happens, and one way or another, we'll still be here. So this morning's reading, let me get my glasses on. This morning's reading is going to come from Luke chapter 9, verses 28 through 36 and 37 through 43a. So it's really 28 through 43a. They make the second part there optional. They do that sometimes in the reading, but we find out oftentimes if we add it in, it kind of gives us a different perspective. Let me get Luke open here. Luke chapter 9, verse 28. Okay. And the beginning of this is titled The Transfiguration. Chapter 28, and this is Amplified Bible. Now about 8 days after these teachings, he took along Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face became different, actually transformed, and his clothing became white and flashing with the brilliance of lightning. And behold, two men were talking with him, and they were Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory, and were speaking of his departure from earthly life, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Now Peter and those who were with him had been overcome with sleep, but when they were fully awake, they saw his glory and splendor and majesty, and the two men who were standing with him. As these men, Moses and Elijah, were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it is delightful and good for us to be here. We should make 3 sacred tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, not realizing what he was saying. But even as he was saying this, a cloud formed and began to overshadow them, and they were greatly afraid as they entered the cloud. Then a voice came out of the cloud, saying, This is my beloved Son, my chosen one. Listen and obey and yield to him. When the voice had ceased, Jesus was found there alone, and they kept silent and told no one at that time of any of the things which they had seen concerning the divine manifestation. On the next day, when they came down from the mountain, a large crowd met him, and a man from the crowd shouted for help. Teacher, I beg you to look at my son, because he is my only child, and a spirit seizes him, and suddenly he cries out, and it throws him into a convulsion, so that he foams at the mouth, and only with great difficulty does it leave him, mauling and bruising him as it leaves. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, You unbelieving and perverted generation, how long shall I be with you and put up with you? Bring your son here to me. Even while the boy was coming, the demon slammed him down and threw him into a violent convulsion. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit and healed the boy and gave him back to his father. They were all amazed, practically overwhelmed, at the evidence of the greatness of God and his majesty and his wondrous work. Okay. So what how do we what is our understanding of this passage right now? One thing, not ignoring the transfiguration. We'll get to that in just a second. This is a very good example, I think, of one of those things we tend to forget about the disciples, and is that they weren't special. They were just humans. Jesus didn't go choose them because they came from any special bloodline or breed or had any special teachings. No, God, saw in them their potential to carry out his plan, but down at the meat and bones, they were really no different than us. They struggle with their faith. They struggle with their humanity. Even when they saw the teachings and they heard the teachings of Jesus, they saw the miracles. And even though Jesus had just told them all about how he was going to be betrayed and he was going to be killed and resurrected, and they still struggle with that, even on the mountain. And we get into it, and let's see, it was Peter, James, and John up with him. As he was praying, the appearance of his face became different, actually transformed. His clothing became white and flashing with the brilliance of lightning. We call this the transfiguration of Jesus, where Jesus transformed, and actually it could be said that the transfiguration was the veil lifting. That was my 8:30 alarm. The transfiguration was the veil lifting off of the true Jesus, where he transformed into a human form to be with us, and on that mountain, on that day, the real Jesus was there. Melinda, an interesting note from the Passion Translation. And chapter 9, 30 to 31, Moses was a lawgiver, Elijah was the notable and true prophet, and the appearance with Jesus on the mountain of the transforming glory. Yeah, that's something just about to get into. And behold, the two men were talking with him. They were Moses and Elijah. So there you have the law, the old covenant, the prophets, and the new covenant, or the law fulfilled, all standing there together. And I think that Peter, James, and John would have, or at least should have, understood that. Melinda says, it points to the supremacy of Jesus over the law and the prophets. See Luke 24:27. There is a limit on words. I didn't know there was a limit on chat words, but thank you there. But yeah, you had the law, Moses, the law, the old covenant. You had Elijah, the what would you call him? Maybe the figurehead or patriarch of the prophets. And Jesus, the new covenant, the law fulfilled. You had the beginning to end right there on the mountain. And it's interesting that, especially with Moses, would have lived, how many thousand years before the disciples did, but they at least understood that was him enough that they recognized it was Moses and Elijah, these guys they'd never met. Waiting to see if Melinda jumps in on anything there. Let's see. They all appeared in glory. They were speaking of his departure from earthly life, which he was about to bring fulfillment at Jerusalem. Now, in the scripture, we had just seen this early on in Luke 9. It had actually been a week as far as the timeline that it says. It was 8 days later, but Jesus had just told all of his disciples about his departure, about how he would be betrayed, about how he would have to die, he would resurrect, and if anyone was to follow him, they would need to take up their cross daily. Anyone who had tried to save his earthly life would lose his eternal life, and anyone who lost his earthly life for Jesus' sake would gain eternal life. So now, this you would hope this would really reinforce it, especially in these three disciples that overheard this. But we don't know just how much they overheard, because we also see they had fallen asleep. But then they were fully awake. They saw his glory and splendor and majesty and the two men who were standing with him. So Peter does something really interesting here when he suggests making the tabernacles for the three of them. This is kind of where he struggles with his own humanity, with everything he's just learned, with everything he's just experienced with Jesus. He's like, it kind of seems to me, and I'm sure it does to others. He's like, wait, let's just forego all that pain and suffering that we're talking about, and let's build the tabernacle and worship you here. And you also see that he doesn't fully grasp what's going on, because they saw Jesus' glory and splendor and the two men who were standing with him. It doesn't, Moses and Elijah weren't shining and in this transfigured, they were probably a holy and glorified their bodies, but they weren't the same as what Jesus was. And it points it out. It shows it, there was a difference there. And then Peter comes through and puts them on the same plane. I want to build a tabernacle for each of the three of you. Let's put the three of you here. Melinda says Peter shows the humanness of the disciples. Yes. And that's something I mentioned right away. The big story here, other than the transfiguration of Jesus, and looking back, we understood before he got here that he was the Son of God. He was God in the flesh. But so notwithstanding that, we see this entire passage from beginning to end is about the struggle of humanity with the disciples go through, and I think we get. Her fingers are going faster than her brain. Happens to me a lot, honey. Happens to me a lot. And I think we get to see a lot of this in the disciples, so that we can make that connection with them, so that we can see that, hey, these weren't specially raised and trained members of God's cabinet and task force. No, they were regular guys trying to figure this out, even when they experienced it and they struggled. Hey, we're going to struggle, but we see as we go through the entirety of it, we'll still be okay in the end, just as they were. But he saw the difference between Jesus and the other two, but he still claims he wants to make a tent for each one of them. Let's forego all this pain and suffering. Let's set up tents for the three of you, and we can start worshiping you here. That's kind of what it seems like Peter's thinking to me. And to him that might have seemed like a noble thing. Hey, all this stuff you just taught us last week is unnecessary. We can just end it here and yeah, we have the benefit of knowing the story. They were living it. So yeah, looking back, hindsight is 2020. If we try to put ourselves in that place, it can get a little more difficult. So he didn't even realize what he was doing or saying here. He thought, I'm sure to him he thought what he was asking for was noble and good and glorifying to God. So what happens once he says this? This is where God steps in. Up until this point, it would be silly to believe that God wasn't there on that mountain. But once Peter really goes through this, I guess what he thinks is kind of probably saying that, this is what God would want kind of deal. That's when God reveals himself as that cloud, and he's like, now wait a minute here. Kind of puts a stop to things. It doesn't matter if you've never known God, or if you've tried to have this relationship with God your entire life. When you're in the presence of God as a human, I think the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to stop and you're going to be afraid. We see many times throughout the Bible it was they're afraid. Need a drink. Hang on. When God reveals himself, it's usually this shame, this I'm not good enough, this I don't deserve to be here, I've really messed up. So the moment God reveals himself, Peter realizes, hey, well, I gotta stop, and they're suddenly overcome with fear. And it says they were greatly afraid as they entered the cloud. Then a voice comes out of the cloud. This would be unmistakably God's voice. This is my beloved Son, my chosen one. Listen and obey and yield to him. And then as God retracts or kind of steps away from the situation, the only one left there is Jesus. And I kind of... We don't know if the entirety of Jesus and Moses and Elijah's conversation was over, but at that point, I think that kind of shows Peter, hey, this guy is separate, not the three of them, not this equal plane. My plan is still my plan. My plan is gonna happen. Steps back, here is just Jesus. Melinda says it's like when Moses came down from the mountain and his face was shining. It was a sign to the people that he was with God. Absolutely. And that's where, and I normally do these studies completely unplanned, but since I went ahead and did the entire week's reading yesterday, so that I could have the just reading videos up, this is actually something, what Melinda's saying is something we're going to get into this week. We're actually going to be talking about the veil all week, and where Moses veiled himself, and where on the Mount of Transfiguration, Jesus in his human form was unveiled on the Mount of Transfiguration. And as Moses came down from the mountain in his time, he had to veil himself because of all that glory, the glory of God that was shining from him. Let's see, then they kept silent, told no one at the time any of the things which they had seen concerning the divine manifestation. And there's a couple things there. I mean, for one, I know Jesus often, like even in the teaching not too long before this, the week before when he was teaching them, and when they told him that they thought he was Christ the Messiah, he said, "Tell no one this." He kind of wanted, it's for others to figure out. While I'm still here on earth, they need to figure it out, and then you tell the world about it. But you kind of wonder if they also go through, if Peter, James, and John are going through this thing. Well, if we told anybody, they'd not believe us, and if they thought we were serious, they might lock us up. What just happened with Jesus becoming this heavenly body, and Moses and Elijah were standing there, and God came down. Who even the crowds that had witnessed the healings, who was going to truly believe that in that moment? So they kept silent about it. And that gives us Jesus on the mountain. And now we get to see, we got the holy and glorified and divine Jesus on the mountain. And now we get to see Jesus in the valley, where he's the compassionate healer. But not just the compassionate healer, because he's also stern with the disciples, as we see here. He came down from the mountain. The large crowd met him. The man brought the son and said, "I beg you to look at my son." The spirit seizes him. "I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not." And Jesus answered, "You unbelieving and perverted generation, how long shall I be with you and put up with you? Bring your son here to me." Very, very much the same struggle that Peter was going through up on the mountain with trying to grasp it all and understand it all. The disciples still down in the valley. This shows that I think Matthew says that Jesus' response, it's either this situation or similar situation, is they lacked prayer and fasting. He wasn't saying that they they weren't going through the right ceremonies to make this particular demon leave this body, or that there were any kind of hierarchy to the demons. And some of them are just stronger and can only be removed by certain levels of religious leaders. It was nothing like that. He was saying you're struggling with your faith here. That's all it is. You're struggling with your faith, and so as Peter's struggling on the mountain, the other disciples are struggling in the valley to really grasp what Jesus has always tried to teach them and always tried to show them. And I think the one thing it shows here, while the boy was coming, the demon slammed him down, threw him into a violent convulsion. This is probably where it came to the point that the disciples couldn't do it. They had been healing crowds, and they had cast out several spirits. I think at one point Jesus tells them, "Don't let the spirits speak." The reason he tells them that I think, and then the reason that this entirety happens right here, you see what this spirit does as it's getting close to Jesus. It throws the boy down. It causes him pain and violent convulsions. It's trying to break their faith. Where Jesus is saying, the only reason that this didn't work is that your faith is waning. And then you see one where it's trying to break their faith, and that's exactly what it would have done to the disciples. They're just as they get in the presence of God and say, I'm not good enough for this. They see a demon who's not any stronger than any other demon, just acts differently, breaks their faith, causes them despair, and suddenly they start doubting themselves. I'm not good enough for this. I can't do this. And as soon as they say that, as soon as your mind tells you that you can't, you're done. And so I think that's where he's at with you, unbelieving and perverted generation. You're allowing that despair, the how would you put that? Your where you start your discouragement, the I can't attitude. You're allowing that to break, to pervert your faith. You're allowing that to get in. If all we would do is hold firm against that, you could do this. You would be right here with me. But so we have the human side of Jesus comes down in the valley. He's compassionate towards the child, towards the father, but he's also kind of stern with the disciples. And I think one of our readings later this week, it might be the Psalm. He says you is compassionate with their sins, yet avenges their wrongdoing, or avenges them for their wrongdoing. We will get into that on Thursday this week. Doubt and unbelief is what comes between us and God. Yes, absolutely. And it doesn't always have to be a demon, an unclean spirit, that breaks our faith like that. This particular spirit is an extreme example, but sometimes it can be this temptation that breaks our faith. It can be this money. Once that money gets in between you and God, and it starts breaking your faith, and you start doubting. You start doubting all this walk you've had with Jesus, or this. It can be a relationship. It can be an addiction. There are many things, and some we would call unclean spirits. And I'm not not downplaying spiritual warfare, because it's real, but I don't think we see the demonic possession so much as there was up to and during while Jesus walked the earth. That was a battle that, yes, still happens, but at the level that we read it at, I don't think it still happens as far as literal demonic possession. But spiritual warfare, all these things, all of these powers of darkness, the money, the temptation, the anything, the pleasures that put themselves between you and God, fight your spirit continuously. Oh, I thought Melinda said something new. And that's said that the same. I don't remember if it's exactly the same story or a different moment where Jesus says when the disciples fail to cast out the demon, and he tells them all you're really missing is prayer and fasting. You're allowing this to break your connection with God. And the more we keep that connection with God, the less we break. So it brings us to the end of that with the 43A. Like I said, I think, not downplaying the transfiguration of Christ at all. I think the main point of seeing Jesus on the mountain and seeing Jesus in the valley is a reminder of just how human those closest to Jesus were, and the struggles they went through, and so that we can compare that with ourselves and see, it's okay for us to go through those same struggles, just as long as we can overcome them, and we do overcome them through Him. Do you have anything else to add, Melinda? Because I believe as far as a morning, first sit down to read and think about it, and what I understand, that's about what I've got out of it this morning. The plan is, and what I generally try to do now later in the day as we go along, Melinda says, the disciples on the mountain is a symbol that we are invited to be like Jesus. We are separate, but we can strive to be like Him. Yes, that's something I didn't. I guess I never really brought out this morning. Yeah, the very fact that the disciples were allowed to be there, that it wasn't so that God had a witness to Jesus and Moses and Elijah standing there. No, it's that we're invited to be there with Him. That's perfect, honey. But yeah, like I've said before, what I generally do now, as the day goes on, I'll sit down and see what the scholars and the theologians of old have said about this passage, and it may be completely different from anything I've said this morning, and but the entire point is to give me an understanding here and now. The lamp unto my feet are right here. The light into my path is right now. And then build on that and have this better and deeper understanding of it. And by the time I go to bed at night, hopefully I never really forget what I've gone through with these scriptures. So that's where I go with that. So, got a few minutes here, rest of the day. Boys do have, we got radio club today. I'm going to be showing them how to make some power poles. One of the leaders of the club needs some power poles converted on a radio. I don't have a handy example right here, but power poles is basically a different kind of plug. It's a universal plug that we can use to you put it on the end of a power supply, and then as long as everything you've converted is to power pole, you can snap anything into that power supply, and it's a good secure high amp connection. So I'll be teaching them how to do that because they've got a few pieces that need done. After that, I'll be in the ceramic shop this evening. I need to put a post on Facebook about that. Be in ceramic shop till 9. That's really starting to wind down. I think we're gonna keep it open about another month in total, but just to let the people who've been working on stuff to finish up their projects. But Aunt Frances wanted it kept open to benefit Grandma, and I think the more we keep it open, the more it takes away from Grandma. And she's, as far as me and my path and my mission, taking care of the old folks has been it. It's been the path God put me on. It is my dedication, my priority, and anything that starts taking away from that, I've got to tear down. And that ceramic shop that Aunt Frances left with good intentions is taking away from that. Otherwise, I'm getting ready to go wake Grandma up and get her day started, and we will let the daily chaos begin. Does Melinda have anything to add before we end the day? Or into the morning? About 3 minutes left before the 9 o'clock anyway. She may not be physically watching at the moment either. Melinda, if you're someone who's watching this either now or in replay, Melinda is my wife. We used to do a pre-recorded Bible study together, but nope. Have a fantastic day, she says. Well, you too, love. But we used to do a pre-recorded Bible study on another channel, and we would sit down at night, and we would do this at night, except it was also pre-planned, pre-studied, write out all our notes, figure out what what we're going to discuss and which translations we're going to read and whatnot. Problem is, it'd take an hour to prepare, an hour to film. It would take 4 or 5 hours to upload, and it really took up a whole lot of our lives. And she can't really do this with me because she's already at work. But when my lovely wife sits at work and is able to watch and give some input, that helps a lot. And once in a while, she doesn't go to work so early, and we have her here with us. But anyway, I believe that is it for my morning quiet time. I gotta, Grandma likes her breakfast be made at 9 o'clock. As long as she's awake, I'm supposed to start making her breakfast at 9, and it is 9 a.m. So, Monday, so we got 3 more days after today. So, until next time, keep on nourishing your dreams, cultivating your passions, embracing the beauty of God's creation. Hope you have a wonderful and blessed day, and we will see you then.